Welcome back to The Explainer. I am so pumped to have you here for episode 298, the AI, Privacy, and Security Weekly Update. We've got a massive, rapid-fire update lined up for you, covering literally everything you need to know for the week ending June 30th, 2026. We're tracking this crazy, fascinating intersection of artificial intelligence, privacy, and global security. So let's just dive right into it, because our first story today is an absolute stunner. So this quote right here, it completely set the tech world buzzing this week. It's a shocking revelation from a deeply covert Meta project, internally known as CANS. Basically, Meta used a contractor firm to pose as teenagers to interrogate rival chatbots. They targeted ChatGPT, Gemini, and Character.ai, secretly firing off over 45,000 prompts in just a single testing round. And we're not talking about simple tech support questions here. These contractors simulated minors in severe distress. Think prompts mimicking a pregnant teen asking for abortion pills, or a fifth grader describing a classmate with a weapon. Now, Meta defends this as standard safety benchmarking, but the sheer scale and secrecy of probing competitors with simulated child crisis scenarios, it has completely shifted the entire conversation around AI safety. To make sense of everything happening this week, we're going to use our four-part blast radius structure. We'll start with AI ethics and corporate overreach, then expand out to consumer privacy under siege, look closely at the developer security crisis, and finally, pull all the way back to the global cyber arms race. Okay, let's start right at ground zero with Section 1, AI ethics and corporate overreach, really focusing in on how boundaries are being tested right now. We're looking at this fascinating collision right now between corporate behavioral testing and rapid legal crackdowns. On one side, like we just saw, you have Meta's massive covert testing project, trying to figure out if rival models will generate harmful content for minors. And honestly, a recent CNN investigation found that 8 in 10 major chatbots did give actionable violent advice to simulated 13-year-olds. So the problem is absolutely real. But on the flip side, lawmakers are finally stepping in. New York State just passed a landmark bill, SB S9511B, essentially banning what it calls unsafe AI companion features for minors. This is huge. It establishes the very first concrete legal definition of deceptive non-sentient AI outputs. For parents and guardians, the takeaway here is pretty immediate. The regulatory patchwork is getting incredibly complex. If you've got minors in your house using any kind of AI companion, you really need to check exactly what persona, memory, and relationship features are enabled right now, because the rules are literally changing overnight. Actually, scratch that, the corporate overreach isn't just external. Meta has had to completely hit the brakes on its model compatibility initiative. This was an internal tool designed to train AI agents by, collecting Meta employees' own mouse movements, keystrokes, and screen content. But they suffered a super basic security flaw, and all that highly sensitive data became accessible to way more employees than intended. It was essentially a massive access control failure on their own workforce. And it brilliantly illustrates the irony here, right? The very people building our cutting-edge AI systems are proving exactly how difficult it is to secure the data used to train them. The bottom line for you is clear. If your employer is rolling out similar agent training surveillance tools, you've got to ask pointed questions right now about who scopes that data and what the fallback is when, and it is a when, not an if, those controls fail. All right, moving into the second zone of our blast radius, consumer privacy under siege. Let's look at how the systemic erosion of our personal data is accelerating. 4.38 million. That is the staggering number of Aflac Japan customers and agents whose personal information was just stolen. But you know what makes this breach super critical? It's not just the scale, it's the timeline. Hackers had 10 full days of completely undetected access inside Aflac's policyholder portal. 10 days. In the cybersecurity world, a 10-day dwell time is an absolute eternity. It gives attackers the time to perfectly map data for highly targeted social engineering. So if you're an Aflac Japan customer, you basically have to operate right now as if your personal details are fully out there. Watch out for hyper-specific phishing attempts that reference your real policy info, because these attackers have the exact data they need to sound incredibly convincing. Now, privacy threats aren't always coming from hackers, right? On one front, we actually have a major victory for privacy advocates. The U.S. Supreme Court just ruled that constitutional Fourth Amendment protections now apply to cell phone location history, which strictly limits the use of those controversial geofence warrants by law enforcement. But look at the flip side. We have the Pentagon actively investigating a massive aggregated metadata exposure tied to a platform called Dialog, which may have unmasked the identities of highly classified national security officials. It's a pretty striking contrast. The courts are protecting our data from dragnets, sure, but the sheer volume of metadata we generate every single day
app pings, location drops, is passively unmasking the most protected individuals in the entire country. The reality for all of us is that location history is our most sensitive daily output. You should really review what apps have access to your metadata today, because that aggregation risk applies to us all, for sure.
Okay, let's pivot to Section 3 and see how this builds into the structural vulnerabilities threatening the folks building tomorrow's tech in the developer security crisis. Take a look at that massive red chunk on this chart. Researchers just tested 444 AI chatbot apps for iOS, and a staggering 282 of them were leaking their API keys in plain text, right over the network. Whoever intercepts those keys can instantly hijack the developer's account and run up massive AI usage bills. It tells developers that careless API key handling isn't just a fluke anymore, it's kind of the industry norm right now. If you're building mobile apps that call an AI API, you have to audit your traffic exactly like an attacker would. And for everyday users, well, it's a stark reminder that the shiny wrapper of an AI-powered app often hides some seriously lacking back-end security.
And you know what? The security tools developers rely on are failing too. A brand new vulnerability dubbed Guardfall just exposed 10 out of 11 popular open-source AI coding agents to a decades-old shell injection technique. How? Because AI safety filters read code as plain text, while computer shells actually expand and rewrite that text before executing it. Attackers can just effortlessly trick the AI. Couple that with Dark Reading's new warning about AI-generated workflows causing these silent disasters because no human actually understands the logic the AI wrote, and man, we have a massive problem. What this means in practice is that untrusted AI input, touching a real system shell, is literally a ticking time bomb. It works, and we understand why it works, are just no longer the same thing in enterprise systems.
Because of all this, the open source community is basically fighting a two-front war right now. On one hand, AI is doing great. It's accelerating legitimate bug discovery. But on the other hand, maintainers are getting absolutely slammed with plausible yet completely fake AI-generated vulnerability reports. It's totally burying the signal in the noise. To survive this, the open source world is desperately rebuilding its defenses. The Rust Foundation just hired a full-time AI security engineer, and the Linux Foundation has launched a huge initiative called ACREATS to coordinate vulnerability responses. But here's the critical question you've got to ask yourself. As these giant, well-funded structures are built to protect open source, will a project like ACREATS stay genuinely community-driven, or is it going to become quietly controlled by the tech giants writing the biggest checks? All right, let's pull all the way back to the macro level for Section 4 and examine how nations are maneuvering defensively and offensively in the global cyber arms race. We are walking a really tight geopolitical tightrope right now. The US government recently let Anthropic release its powerful Mythos 5 cybersecurity model to select trusted partners, basically unwinding a previous export ban. But over in China, a model released by Zipu AI has already independently matched Anthropic's Mythos in cybersecurity benchmarks. This entirely undercuts Washington's strategy of trying to keep powerful models out of foreign hands through export bans. I mean, if a frontier capability can just be replicated independently within months, the policy debate in the US urgently needs to shift from banning and blocking to keeping pace and out-innovating. But hey, it's not all doom and gloom. Apple recently fixed a batch of pretty severe WebKit vulnerabilities, and they explicitly credited Anthropic's Claude and OpenAI's Codex for finding them before they could be exploited in the wild. This is a huge, concrete counterweight to the panic that AI is only going to supercharge attackers. The world's largest software vendor just proved that AI-assisted code review is an incredibly potent defensive tool. The takeaway here? AI vulnerability scanning has officially moved way past the experimental stage. If your enterprise defense strategy doesn't already include it, you are for sure falling behind. Now, shifting from software to hardware, we're seeing how physical tech supply chains are heavily impacting national defense. South Korea is desperately trying to train its military conscripts with commercial drones, but they're really struggling to source enough drones that don't contain Chinese-made parts. China dominates the global commercial drone supply chain so thoroughly that even a close U.S. ally is caught in this structural bind, essentially forced to choose between training scale and supply chain security. This is the ultimate leading indicator for any nation trying to integrate cheap, dual-use technology into their defense forces right now. Which brings us to arguably the most sobering warning of the week. This is from a unanimous joint statement issued by the Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance. That's agencies from the US, UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. They are calling for an urgent focus on cyber resilience, specifically stating that frontier AI models are fundamentally transforming both offensive and defensive capabilities on a timeline of months, not years. Listen, intelligence agencies do not coordinate multinational joint statements and throw around the word urgent lightly. They are signaling a massive paradigm shift that is happening right this very second. So, I want to leave you with this final provocative thought today. Are your organization's patch cycles truly ready for the AI era? If top-tier intelligence agencies are compressing the remediation windows to mere months because AI is finding and exploiting flaws faster than ever, then those traditional leisurely quarterly security reviews are completely obsolete. You have to rethink your defense speed today. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, stay secure, and I'll catch you next time as we continue to unpack the frontier of technology.